Since it's now October and continuing on the theme of animals that are a little bit spooky, today we're talking about some, well, let's just call them Halloween themed animals. Now, mostly when we think of animals and Halloween, we think of black cats and bats and spiders and maybe snakes. Those top the list, followed by vultures and maybe crows. But the two animals I'm talking about today are entirely unrelated to each other and not necessarily your traditional Halloween critters. They're not going to be appearing as Halloween decorations or costumes for kids or dogs. But they fit the theme either because of how they look, their behavior, or because, like the whippoorwills from the last episode, humans have decided to ascribe some ominous meaning to one or both of the above. So who knows? Maybe after learning more about these creepy creatures, you'll be inspired and you can go to your next costume party dressed as an eye. A what, you ask? Well, let's find out. I'm your host, Tim the Nature Nerd O'Hara, and this is the Dispatches from the Forest podcast. What animal are we talking about today, kids?
Aye, Captain!
I can't hear you!
Aye, Captain!
Oh, well, okay, wait. It doesn't live in a pineapple under the sea. It lives in Madagascar. But the first animal we're going to talk about today is the aye-aye. Aye-ayes are primates, actually a type of lemur, and I talked about lemurs in episode 104. In fact, aye-ayes are the world's largest nocturnal primate. An adult aye-aye is about 1.5 feet or 44 centimeters long, plus another 2 feet or 60 centimeters of tail. Average weight, about 4 pounds or 2 kilograms. But while lemurs are cute, aye-ayes are less so, but maybe kind of that ugly cute, like a hairless cat or one of those dogs whose tongues hang out constantly. One description I read said they look like a cat started turning into a vampire, but then just gave up halfway through. You can also try to imagine what it would look like if a bat and a squirrel had a baby. Or, if you remember the Crypt Keeper from Tales from the Crypt, kind of like that guy, but in animal form with more hair. They have big, round ears, round yellow eyes that make them look perpetually surprised, and rodent-like incisors. In fact, like rodents, their incisors grow constantly, which, combined with that squirrel-like tail, toes, and coloring, led early naturalists to classify them as rodents. But later research found that they are in fact related to lemurs, the theory being that the ancestors of aye-ayes colonized Madagascar separately from those of other lemurs. But one of the standout features of the aye-aye are its fingers, specifically the third finger, which is much thinner and longer than the rest of them. This finger is also unique among other fingers in the animal kingdom because it has a ball and socket joint. Now, if you're thinking that an extra long, thin finger would be incredibly useful for picking your nose, well, you're gross. But also you've hit on one of the ways the aye-aye uses this finger. That long, thin finger can reach the throat through the aye-aye's small possum-like nostrils and is used for picking its nose and eating mucus, a behavior called mucophagy. And I kid you not, somebody got paid to research and write a scientific paper called A Review of Nose Picking in Primates with New Evidence of Its Occurrence in Aye-ayes. Although, to be fair, they didn't say aye-ayes, they used the scientific name, which is much too much of a mouthful for me to try and correctly pronounce. But why eat mucus? Well, in humans, eating boogers is usually something children do, and we tend to outgrow it. But if it is found in adults, it's considered to be more of an obsessive-compulsive behavior. In animals, well, it's kind of a mystery. Possible explanations include relieving irritation, getting some nutrition, and supporting the immune system. But anyways, in addition to picking their nose, aye-ayes use that finger in another unique way. So, aye-ayes are omnivores. They eat seeds, nuts, fruit, nectar, fungi, tree sap, and honey. But like I said, they're omnivores, and they also eat xylophagus, which is a fancy word for wood boring, insect larvae. And here's where that middle finger comes into play. Aye-ayes tap on the trunks and branches of trees at a rate of up to 8 times per second and listen to the echo produced to find hollow chambers. Their ears have a complex geometry of ridges on the inner surface that helps to sharply focus not only echolocation signals from the tapping of its finger, but also to hear any other sound produced by the prey they're looking for. Once a chamber is found, the aye-aye uses those rodent-like incisors to chew a hole in the wood and then extract the grubs with that bony middle finger. This foraging method is called percussive foraging, and the only other animals that do it are striped possums, marsupials from New Guinea that look like a cross between skunks and possums. From an ecological perspective, the aye-aye is filling the same niche as a woodpecker, penetrating wood to extract the invertebrates inside. So, at this point you might be wondering why I consider the aye-aye to be quote-unquote Halloween themed. Just because it's weird looking with a long bony finger? Not quite. The aye-aye, like many nocturnal animals, strange looking or not, is often viewed as a harbinger of evil and death and killed on sight, often hung up so the evil spirit will be carried away by travelers. Some people believe that if one points its bony nose-picking finger at you, you're marked for death. Some say that the appearance of an aye-aye in a village predicts the death of a villager, and the only way to prevent that death is to kill the aye-aye first. The Sakalava people go so far as to claim aye-ayes sneak into houses through the thatched roofs and murder the sleeping occupants by using that middle finger to puncture their victim's aorta. And of course, none of that is rooted in actual fact. It's assigning cause and effect to coincidence. Like when I talked about whippoorwills, there's probably just a lot of natural causes that people can die from in the same area where aye-ayes are found. Thatched roofs and high-tech modern medicine don't exactly go hand in hand. Between these superstitions, deforestation, poaching, and local farmers killing aye-ayes to protect their crops, which for the record there's no evidence that aye-ayes pose any legitimate threat to crops, aye-ayes were actually thought to be extinct by 1933, but were thankfully rediscovered in 1957. Recent research shows that aye-ayes are more widespread than previously thought, but they're still listed as endangered since 2014. Okay, the second animal I want to tell you about today is easy to see how it fits with a Halloween theme. It's the vampire squid. Scientifically, and I'm going to do my best with this name, Vampiroteuthis infernalis, which even scientifically translates literally as vampire squid from hell. It doesn't get much more Halloween-y than that, am I right? Now, maxing out at about 1 foot or 30 centimeters long, these small cephalopods live where few other animals can, in the aphotic or lightless depths of the ocean, at depths of 2,000 to 3,000 feet, 600 to 900 meters, or even deeper. So, why are they called vampire squid? Do they suck blood? No. It's because the vampire squid has a webbing of skin connecting its 8 arms that creates a dark shroud like the cape of Count Dracula. The inner side of this cloak is black. Each of its arms is lined with rows of fleshy spines called cirri. Only the distal halves of these arms, the farthest from the body, have suckers. So while vampire squid have 8 arms, they lack the feeding tentacles of octopuses. Instead, they have 2 what are called retractile filaments that are used to capture food. These filaments have small hairs on them made up of many sensory cells that help them detect and secure their prey. Now, at the depths where the vampire squid are found, there's a discrete habitat known as the oxygen minimum zone, or OMZ. In the OMZ, the saturation of oxygen is too low to support aerobic metabolism that most complex organisms use to live. The vampire squid is the only cephalopod able to live its entire life cycle in the OMZ, at oxygen saturations as low as 3%. To cope with life in these suffocating depths, vampire squid have developed several adaptations. First of all deep-sea cephalopods, they have the lowest metabolic rate compared to their mass. Their blood transports oxygen more efficiently than in other cephalopods, helped by gills that have an especially large surface area. Vampire squid have weak musculature. These are not the kraken here, but they maintain agility and buoyancy with very little effort because of sophisticated balancing organs called statocysts, very similar to our inner ear, and ammonium-rich gelatinous tissues that closely match the density of the surrounding seawater. Vampire squid have large eyes and optic lobes in their brain, which may be an adaptation giving them greater sensitivity to distant bioluminescence, a sign of animals like prey or potential mates. This sensitivity would be useful for monitoring vast areas in the water column, which is largely dark and featureless at those depths. So, what's their primary prey? What do vampire squid eat? Primarily, they feed on what's called marine snow, a continuous shower of mostly organic detritus falling from the upper layers of the water column, the remains of various zooplankton, and fecal pellets. Then they combine this detritus with mucus secreted from their suckers to form balls of food. Sounds delightful, doesn't it? Now, while the vampire squid isn't currently considered to be endangered or threatened, this part of their diet puts them at increased risk for microplastic pollution. We've all heard about sea turtles and plastic straws, but microplastics can cause death by decreasing feeding activity. They take up space in the digestive tract, make the animal feel full, but don't provide any nutrition. In addition to hopefully plastic-free marine snow, vampire squid are also opportunistic hunters of live fish and crustacean. But you might be asking, how does one hunt where there's no light to see your prey? Well, vampire squid use a unique luring method where they purposefully agitate bioluminescent bacteria in the water as a way to attract larger prey, which they can then consume. How cool is that? Now, the vampire squid's ability to thrive in the OMZ helps keep it safe, or safer anyways, from apex predators that would require much larger amounts of oxygen in order to, well, live. But they do get eaten. Vampire squid have been found in the stomachs of large deep-water fish and deep-diving mammals like whales. So in addition to just hanging out in the OMZ, vampire squid have evolved some other really cool defense mechanisms to help reduce the chance of getting eaten. Now, like many deep-sea cephalopods, vampire squid don't have ink sacs. It makes sense when you think about it. A black cloud shot into the darkness of the deep sea is not going to be very helpful. Imagine standing in a completely dark room and then covering yourself with a blanket. Not a whole lot of difference, you know what I mean? Likewise, the chromatophores, or pigment organs that are common to most other cephalopods, are poorly developed in the vampire squid. So they can't just change their skin color in dramatic fashion to camouflage like shallow water-dwelling cephalopods. Again, it makes sense. That ability would be wasted in the lightless depths of the OMZ. Instead, the vampire squid is almost entirely covered in light-producing organs called photophores, which it can use to produce disorienting flashes of light ranging in duration from fractions of a second to several minutes. The intensity and size of the photophores can also be modulated. And if that doesn't work, or when it's startled, the squid will curl its arms up and wrap them around its body, kind of turning itself inside out. This makes the squid seem larger and exposes the spiny projections on its tentacles, the cirri. The underside of the cape is heavily pigmented, so it conceals most of the body's photophores. The glowing arm tips, though, are clustered together far above the animal's head, diverting attack away from critical areas. This anti-predator behavior has been dubbed the pumpkin or pineapple posture. So I guess at least one of today's subject is a pineapple under the sea after all. The tips of its arms can regenerate, so if they get bitten off, that's okay with the squid. They can serve as a diversion, allowing the animal to escape while its predator is distracted. But wait, there's more. It may not have ink sacs, but if highly agitated, the vampire squid can eject a sticky cloud of bioluminescent mucus containing innumerable orbs of blue light from its arm tips. This luminous barrage, which can last for nearly 10 minutes, is assumed to dazzle would-be predators and allow the vampire squid to disappear into the darkness without needing to necessarily swim very far. The glowing mucus can also stick to the predator, creating what's called the burglar alarm effect, making the vampire squid's would-be predator more visible to secondary predators. Sort of an enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of thing. But this display is only made if the animal is very, very agitated, because there's a high metabolic cost to regenerate that mucus. These bioluminescent fireworks, combined with the writhing of glowing arms and erratic movements and escape trajectories, make it difficult for a predator to identify the actual squid from all these other glowing targets. Now, there's speculation that the vampire squid retractile filaments play a larger role in predator avoidance via both detection and escape mechanisms, but studying anything that thrives in those deepest parts of the ocean is tough to do, so a lot of mysteries remain unsolved. And on that note, we're going to put this episode to bed, or in the case of the vampire squid, in the casket. Because Dracula sleeps in a casket. It's a Halloween reference, okay? If you want to support the podcast, here's some ways to do that. Become a patron. Subscriptions start at just $5 a month, and with 3 paid months, you get some sweet Dispatches from the Forest merch. Find all the details at patreon.com/dispatchesfromtheforest. You can donate through PayPal using my email address, dispatchesfromtheforest@gmail.com. which is also how you can contact me if you have a question or a comment or a request for a future episode. If you want to just send a check, send me an email and I'll let you know my mailing address. Or you can donate using the Cash App and the hashtag ForestNerd. Go ahead and check out the merch store at cafepress.com/shop/dispatchesfromtheforest. Click on products, find something you like. There's lots of stuff over there. Finally, follow Dispatches from the Forest on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. I'm your host, Tim the Nature Nerd O'Hara, reminding you to go outside and get dirty. The Dispatches from the Forest podcast is a production of Dispatches from the Forest and may not be used or rebroadcast whole or in part without express written permission.